Mostly just going to be me talking. I don't have anything new to show. Just going to talk for a bit about the current state of my IDEX project, what I think of Eddie's design, and ideas and thoughts and direction I think things should go. First, before I get started, my last video about the heater for the V2, after making the video I realized that my backup power supply is actually only 600 watts. It has 1,000 in the model number, so I thought it was 1,000 watt. It's only 600 watts, so it wasn't surprising at all that the chamber heater was tripping it. So I still like the design. I'm going to move forward with it. I ordered some aluminum composite for the back and top, so won't have to worry about the heat affecting the top. And then where the front crossbar was getting really hot, I'm going to make some kind of deflector input there, and we'll see how well that works out. And I'll probably end up using a similar design on this IDEX machine. Kind of been at a crossroads with the IDEX. It's working, so I hate to change stuff. The only thing I definitely looking forward to changing is that these Y motors are crazy loud. They're just junk motors that came out of a used printer. So I got some new stepper online motors, and I'm going to install those, because right now it's ridiculous. You can tell if it makes a straight X move, it's quiet, and if it makes a straight Y move, it's loud. So, like I said, been at kind of a crossroads. I kind of wanted to turn this into a true Trident, so that any ideas I came up with would be more relevant to people building printers today, because I don't think anybody's gonna start out intending to build a 1.8 today. So that was where I wanted to go, but looking at some things, thinking about converting to the Trident, the main thing would be flipping these rails to underneath. But then I was reminded that my Z-axis rails, since this is a 1.8 frame, I don't have as much height here. On a true Trident, this would stop and this would be up higher, which I could move it up, but then my tool heads are sticking out the top of the printer or too close to the top of the printer. So I'm just going to stick with the 1.8 rails on top for now. I do like that you can put the lights underneath the rails too. There's nothing under there to interfere with them. So we're not going to do that. The other thing I would like to do is get rid of the umbilicals and get it tucked back into this frame. And so to do that, we're pretty much going to have to go to CAN bus. And most people running CAN bus are running umbilicals. I'd still like to get away from that and go back to having a cable chain. But to have a cable chain, you can't have anything else back here hanging off the motor, at least not in that position. So what I'm thinking about doing is eliminating the part cooling fan, because I like printing parts out of ABS with no fan to make them as strong as possible. It can be done, but you've got to go crazy slow on overhangs, or not print anything that has an overhang. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. So that's one of the things I'm going to work on next, is setting up the CAN bus, and then I'll probably move the electronics back underneath and print some skirts and get this thing looking more like a standard Voron. One of the things that's doesn't appear to be decided on the Voron design side is how actually far we would stretch the frame. When Eddie made his original design, he just used the same width crossbars as a 350mm build, which I think was the right way to go, because we're sticking in-house current Voron build material stuff. I look online every once in a while to see if anyone has mentioned any Voron IDEX stuff, and there's hardly ever anything. But I did come across a Twitter post by Eddie where he was asking whether people would rather have the frame stretched wider or just accept the slightly less than 250mm build volume you're going to get for both tool heads. Here are my thoughts on that. The rails usually come in 50mm increments. So to get the extra 25 or so millimeter we need now, we'd have to make the printer 50mm wider, which I don't really want to do. I did see a few vendors with 430mm rails, but there were only a couple, and I bet those are specialty parts, and if it becomes a Voron design, those parts are going to dry up pretty quick. So we've got the 400mm rail in here, and about 5mm of it is covered up by the pieces on the end. So a little bit could be cheated there, but I don't think I would even do that. Got to thinking about the beds, and you know, this tool head has access to all this area here, but there's no bed there for it to print on. So if you had a wider bed, you know, you could have the full 350mm print volume. It's just that this tool head could not get to the last 50mm or so. And then that especially comes into play if mirror mode is added, because this tool head could have 175mm to itself, and that tool head could have 175mm to itself. But then you've got the problem of where you're going to get spring steel plates and beds and stuff. Are you going to buy 350mm by 350mm and just hack 100mm off the back every time? So you might as well stick with a 350mm by 350mm plate, and at that point you've just got a Trident 350 frame. So if I wanted a Voron IDEX printer starting today, knowing what I know now, I would just start out with a 350mm build spec Trident, and then you've already got all you need is an extra carriage rail and the Y drive stuff. Everything else is exactly the same. And then the first tool head, you know, it couldn't reach the area occupied by that tool head, but it would have a 300 by 350mm build volume. Or if you wanted to use whatever filament was in that one, it could have the same. Both tool heads would reach the center like 235, and if the tool heads were made narrower, we could squeeze that to 250. Basically, you would just have a 350mm Trident kit and toss in the extra parts for the Y drive and the second tool head and the carriage. The only problem I see with that is that in Eddie's design and in a lot of IDEX designs, you've got a wiper here mounted on the side that the tool head can wipe the nozzle before returning to the bed. I think as long as you've got a prime tower, you'd be okay, and it would slow down a print, but you could add a wiper to the back of the printer still, because you've got that extra space back there where the Z end stop is. So you've got that to work with. So for this tool head, to reach the full 250 millimeters of travel, right now I'm 12 millimeters short. So if I wanted to narrow the tool heads, I don't have to shave 12 millimeters off this side of this one. I can shave 6 millimeters off this and 6 millimeters off that side, just so they can get closer together. So that's kind of the direction I'm heading. Right now, having the reduced build volume has not come into play at all. So here's where I'm going with this. If you lop the sides off of an afterburner tool head, pretty much this is what you end up with. And we've deleted the cooling fan, which I try to avoid using the cooling fan whenever possible because I like strong parts. So that would be something a lot of people would not give up, but that's the sacrifice I'm making for now, at least to move forward with the idea. So on this one, nothing is on this side. So this would be going up against, this would be the right side tool head. And then the parts of the extruder that stick out would be up here, and all the wiring would be on this side. And the other thing with the wiring, if we get rid of the cooling fan, we can put the CAN bus in the front, wiring coming out the top next to the reverse Bowden tube. And you could fit a thin frame on each side of this. You'd probably have it open for airflow anyway though. So by the time you add a fan on the bottom, you're up to that thickness. Folding over the wires and stuff might get a little tight. But so far we've kept everything within the original parameters, and there's nothing sticking out the back further than the original, and there's nothing sticking out the front further than the original. And the other thing I like about having the CAN bus in the front is, like for this fan, the wire's right there for the hot end. The wires would just come up the side. Nothing would have to cross to the back. And then this is an older carriage from when they had the switches in the side. But the wires coming up from the bottom could go toward the front instead of out the back. So if we could get that with the wiring flat enough, you could stick another 40 millimeter fan in front of the CAN bus to cool the stepper driver that's on there, since we're probably going to have a heated chamber. So that's my idea, but I haven't needed to print anything that wide. I haven't needed those extra 12 or 24 millimeters on the edges of the bed, so I'm just sticking with the original tool heads. So I've still got my cooling, but this is the direction I'm thinking about going. And then instead of wires being routed out the back or side, we may even be able to get the stepper motor with the wires going down and then not have any wires visible. And then it's the old design with the smaller rails. We had this down here. If we went with clicky probe or something else, wouldn't necessarily have to have the spot for the inductive sensor there. So, this space that was occupied down here by this for the other rail and the inductive sensor, may be able to squeeze a little fan back in there. So, if you could squeeze that down in there, you still might be able to have some kind of cooling fan. So I might tinker with that moving forward. I'm disappointed that I haven't seen people printing Eddie's design and trying it. You could tell when he originally posted it, he didn't have a lot of time to work on it. So I think he was hoping other people would pick up on it and make improvements and figure things out, see what worked and what didn't. Not sure how much my tinkering does that, since I'm not working with a full Trident design and went a different direction with the Y drive. But here are a couple critiques on his design. A couple things, because I originally printed the parts. I printed some of the parts just to see how they went together for the Tridex, and a couple things made me hesitate and hold off on building one. This is one of the tensioners, and you can see between the middle and bottom pulley you got this super thin layer. When this part printed, I assumed something was wrong with it. Went back and checked my slicer to make sure it wasn't embedded down below the bed level, but you know, that is the part and that's how it prints. So I thought, well, that ain't gonna make it into the final design, so I'll just wait and see what gets developed. The only other thing about his design I don't like is the attachment of the Y belts. Might be perfectly secure for all I know. Like I said, I haven't built it and tried it, but I would like to have seen them turning back in on themselves, wrapping around something, or being able to be tightened down with a screw. So if I could convert this to a Trident, or was willing to, that's one of the things I would work on. But as it stands, I'm going to let other people try and figure it out. And then if Voron ever does come up with an official design, I will definitely make one. Another IDEX I came across, someone else that is inspired by Eddie's design. There is a V0 called Double Dragon. Look that up. I will put a link in the description. And they have posted all the STLs, all the pictures, instructions, all the workarounds I said would be needed for Clipper. They've got all that incorporated in the printer.config files there. So yeah, for all the workarounds, I'm probably just going to end up copying their work into my Clipper file. Never sure how to end these things, so I think I'll just let the print go.